The third thing we're going to look at with objects is something called apply methods. And you put apply methods inside companion objects, and what they do is they work like constructors. As I note here, technically they're not constructors, but they work just like them. So if you've ever heard of the factory method in object-oriented programming, putting this kind of code, putting apply methods in companion objects is similar to that. And notice that I have a slight mistake in the book, and that's why I put a note to myself that this should say companion objects, not just plain objects right there. And the process for this is fairly simple. It's just a three-step process. And I note one thing here before we get into this is that each apply method you add creates a different way that instances of your class can be created. So this is like having different constructors or, again, different factory methods for your class. And as for the process itself, it's this three-step process that I outlined here. So using a person class as the example, the first step is you would define a person class and person object in the same file. Then in step 2, you would make the person class constructor private. And then step 3 is that you define one or more apply methods in the object to serve as factory methods. And again, you can have as many of these as you need. So I show this in my book here on the bottom of this page and going on to the next page. So I'm going to go ahead and put this code in an editor so we can see how it works in these 3 steps. So I went ahead and moved things around a little bit so we can see these 3 steps down here while I'm typing. The first one is to create a person class and person object in the same file. So we'll just go ahead and start doing that. So here's a person class and here's a person object. And that's all we have to do for step 1. And what I'm going to do now is make a little room down there. And what step 2 says is we want to make the person class constructor private. And the way you do that in Scala, and I don't think I've shown this yet, is you use a private keyword right there. And then you add whatever constructor parameters you want. So I'm going to say that I want a name. And I'll make that a val field. And I want an age. And that is also a val field. And the first one's a string and the second one is an int. And the other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is to implement a toString method. And I want to do this to make our output a little bit easier to read. $name is $age years old. So this part isn't really necessary in terms of the 3 steps. I'm just doing that to make things a little more convenient. So now that we did this for step 2, we're going to come down here. Oops, I forgot this, so I need a colon there. And then a colon here. And now I'm going to start defining apply methods. And the way you do this is the method just needs to be named apply. And I'm going to start off initially taking no parameters. So again, if you want to think of these as factory methods, this is a factory method that doesn't take any input parameters. And what it needs to do is, one way or another, it needs to return an instance of a person. So what I'm going to do for this one is just return a new person instance with a couple of default parameters. So we'll just have a blank for the name, and then the age will default to 0. And it will create a few more apply methods as we go along, but for right now I'm just going to leave it there. So I'll save that, and then we'll come over to here. And now what I'm going to do is test that. So I'm going to say val p equals person, and just like that. So then I'll do a print line on p. So that's all I'm going to do. And this guy right here is going to test the constructor or factory method that I just created right here, because this one takes no input parameters. It is going to come over here and do that. Now what I want to do here is just run that with Scala CLI. So I can just run that like that. And we get that output, so you can see that the factory method or constructor is being called. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that the apply method is actually syntactic sugar. And it's syntactic sugar that lets us appear to call a constructor here. But what happens under the hood is that the Scala compiler looks around. So if you write code like this, the Scala compiler is going to look around and try to find something to match this. So it says, well, is there a constructor for a person class that takes no input parameters? So you come over here and look for that, and there is no constructor over here that takes no input parameters. The only constructor there is this one, and it's marked private. So that means other people cannot use this. And if you recall from previous lessons, this object is a companion object to this class, and this class is a companion to this object. And what that means is that the object can see the person's private members, and the class can see the object's private members. So in this case, the object here can see this right here, which is the private constructor, and that's why this part works right there, is because the object can see that even though it's marked private. But getting back to the compiler, there are no constructors up here that take no input parameters. So then the second thing the compiler does is it looks down here in the object and it says, oh, do you have any apply methods that have no constructor parameters? And indeed, this one does. So it comes here and it matches that, and then it calls this code right here, and then that's what gives us this output right here. And one more point about this being syntactic sugar is you can actually call apply just like that, and you get the exact same result. So that's the other thing the compiler does. Let me back up for just a moment. Is the compiler has just found this apply method in the person object. So the next thing it does in one of its compilation steps is it changes that to this. So then I'll go ahead and save that and rerun it, and you'll see the exact same output. So again, this is syntactic sugar for this, but nobody likes typing, so we just go ahead and get rid of that. So as I've mentioned, this appears to be a constructor, and you can also think of it as being a factory method. And what we can do now is create more of these guys over here and start creating new apply methods. So I'm going to copy and paste that just to be a little bit lazy. So now what I would do is something a little unusual. So you wouldn't normally use this naming standard, but I am doing it just to be clear. So give me just a minute to type. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating this variable name with an underscore. And I'm doing that to be very clear that this name, this underscore name, is not the same as this name right here. So I'm taking this variable in through this apply method, and then when I call this code right here, this is invoking this private constructor right here. And I just wanted to be clear that this variable name is not the same as that variable name right there. And by that, I mean that it might be a little confusing if I had used this variable name without the underscore. So that's why I'm using the underscore here. And the other thing I want to do now is create yet another constructor. And so I'll follow the same standard and call that one underscore age. And now I'm going to put that on a new line to make that a little bit easier to read. And then we can say age like that. And if it's easier actually to do that, then I will just go ahead and put all these constructors on new lines. So maybe that's, I don't know, that's easier to read or that's easier to read for you. But I just want to show I have three different constructors. This one takes no arguments. This one takes a string argument. This one takes a string and an int. So I'll go ahead and save that code. And now we can come over here and create all the instances we want using those constructors. And what I'm going to do is a little shortcut here. So now I'm just going to print these out directly. And we won't bother using any variables here. So that's one. And one of the constructors takes the name, so I can do that. And then another constructor took the name and the age. So we can say Alvin 42 for that one. And then I'll go ahead and save that and come down here. And you should be able to see all those constructors at work. And there we go, there. And so again, this code shows everything you need to do to write apply methods. Down here, I had the 3-step formula in the book for how to write apply methods. And then up here, I showed how to do that. And the only thing you have to think about when writing these apply methods is what input parameters or constructor parameters do you want to take? And so now if I go back to the book over here and go down a page or two, what I do here is I show a totally different type of constructor. And actually we could do this one pretty easily, so I'll go ahead and do that. I don't want to duplicate all this, but what this one does right here is this takes a tuple as an input parameter right here. So this is a tuple that has two values in it. The first one is a string here, and then the second one is an int. So you can take that and construct a person out of it. And what I do here is say, I'm going to take the 0 field, the first field, as a string, and use that for the name, and then use the second one, or the index value 1, and that's going to be the age. So let's go ahead and do that one real quick. And one quick note, I'm not going to go ahead and do this one, but what this one does is it takes a var args parameter, so it's a tuple right here, and then it's a variable number of tuples. So I've covered var args fields before, so this can take 0 or more tuples, like this one right here. And so what I do here is now I say for T in that list of tuples go ahead and yield a new person. So it does this same code right here, and it just does that for every tuple that's passed in. And then this one returns a sequence of person rather than just one person. So this is another interesting use that I do show in the book. I'm not going to get into that, but I will go back and show this other one real quick. So this one is right here. This is the new tuple one. So I'll go ahead and save that and then come back over here. And I'll go ahead and show the age one as well. So let's condense these guys now. And the first new one I'll do is just the age, like that. And then the second one is going to be a tuple. And that may be a little confusing, so let me do it this way. Well, P equals, and now we're going to do a person. Give me a little room there to work with. And now I can put this same code in here. So say Alvin and then 42 there. Let me delete that one. Oops, and then do a print line on that person right there. So this one tests the int constructor, and then this one tests the tuple constructor, where here I'm passing a tuple in to that person constructor. So we save that, then come back here and run that again. And there we go. And the only problem I really have right there is because I default to a blank string that has that output right there. But other than that, both of those work as expected. So as a quick recap, that's what apply methods in companion objects are, and that shows how they work.